Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Case Study QB, and we are in the Progressive War Room with Terence Cudney, who's running for Massachusetts State Senate as an independent. And hey, Terence, say what's up to the people.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Yeah, no,
Right.
nice to be on with you there, Case. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm really excited to have a conversation here.
Awesome. So we're just gonna have fun, gonna talk some electoral strategy. That's what the Progressive War Room is all about. But first, I want to talk to you about your run for state senate and let us know how's the campaign going and how's that going for you.
Yeah, so I entered the race last September, basically pretty early on because the person I'm running against, the incumbent, has been in office for 27 years. Basically has 100% name recognition in the district, give or take. So I wanted to get in early. This is my first run for office. I'm a software entrepreneur. Sort of that's my previous life, if you will. I got laid off in 2018, and we can talk about that if you want, that whole saga. But made the difficult decision to go back to waiting tables after 7 years outside of the industry, and that was all like right before COVID hit.
Mhm.
And so it was the time of COVID that
Mhm.
kind of got me thinking about how can I make a bigger impact? What can I do for my community?
Let me jump in there right there because I do think of you say you're an entrepreneur, and then especially in the tech business, so I'm automatically thinking, oh, money, and then you say you went from that to waiting tables. Not to say there's no dignity in waiting tables, but I'm curious, how did that evolution happen?
Yeah, no, it was a pivotal time in my life. So I was working for my third startup at that time.
Mhm.
They'd raised a first round of funding a couple of years earlier.
Now you say your third startup.
Yeah.
Each of those companies, did you start them, or you happen to be, hired into a startup?
So my first startup, I was one of the co-creators of,
Okay.
kind of in it from the ground floor, so to speak. My second one, I came in kind of at a major change for the company in terms of their product offering and that sort of thing. And the third one, I'd say they were more established in the sense that they'd been around a good bit longer. So
Okay.
yeah, there's
Okay.
some
So
nuance.
so the last one was more stable. When you got hired, maybe it's 20 people, what, 50 people? Employees?
Stable in the startup world is a very tenuous term.
Okay.
You're
Okay.
pretty much these are all like pre-Series A, if that's a term that means anything to you.
To me,
Um,
but I think I understand it, but for the audience,
yeah,
that means that the first amount of investment was put in, correct?
yeah, the best way to kind of describe it for the layperson who's not
Okay.
directly
Okay.
in it. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. Yeah, you've got
Okay.
your first round of funding or so in.
Mhm.
You're trying to kind of build your customer base at
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
That's generally where
Yeah.
my
So
solutions.
exactly. So how did you get from that that third company to waiting tables?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I was coming off of just having delivered basically the biggest expansion in the product offering for my company, my startup company, since their flagship product had launched two and a half years earlier, give or take. And basically, they came to me kind of out of nowhere. Like I said, I just delivered a major victory for them, and they said, we have to let you go. We're running out of money, as startups often do, and we have to kind of make some difficult decisions about personnel, and in order to keep our runway alive, to keep the company alive. And that was devastating. That was like that was the whole rug got pulled out from under me, no warning. And so I languished, if I'm being honest, a little bit, and tried a little bit of consulting for other products for a little bit, and just wasn't feeling it. Wasn't feeling motivated. Wasn't feeling like it was sustainable. And I'd been with my partner for um, around a year at that point, and so we had to make some, tough financial decisions about like how do we kind of keep things going, how do we, pay the rent, basically, and so we actually, long story short, we moved in with their parents back to Gloucester. I was in like the Boston area at the
Okay.
time, but we moved
Okay.
back to Gloucester, which is on the North Shore of Massachusetts, and then we found a winter rental, and basically, yeah, I started working at, believe it or not, her dad's restaurant, and
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah, a little bit of light nepotism there.
Yeah. So that makes sense that you like, let's help out, the soon to
Yeah, and
be
it was
family.
right,
Oh,
exactly, and
yeah.
it was funny. Her dad, his name's Alejandro.
Okay.
Um, he basically like framed it as, oh, you're going to be helping us out, but it was very like strategic on his part to like, we
Yeah.
gotta get you like get you back on your feet, but he
Yeah.
convinced me that I was helping him out, but
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha. Okay.
that's the story there.
Wow. So you definitely got both perspectives of having your foot in both worlds. So how can that help you on the campaign trail and to relate to, the average person, and how do you translate that to your campaign?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it as like kind of, traversing socioeconomic classes a couple of times. My first job out of college was a support line operator for Apple products,
Mhm.
and then I waited tables, and then I moved to DC. My undergraduate was in international studies, so I was interested in becoming a diplomat at that time. So I moved
Okay.
to DC, was like trying to get into international politics,
Mhm.
basically.
Mhm.
And then I had the idea for the first startup with a peer from high school,
Mhm.
and but yeah, so I guess really the short answer is, because I've kind of been in both worlds, I think, as you put,
Mhm.
well, I think that means that I can connect with people from any background,
Yeah.
really, and I
What's
think that's
funny?
huge.
As you said, went to DC to try to become a diplomat, and the first thing I thought of is like, man, all these diplomats all these people who become diplomats are like the donors, the rich donors of the president or whoever it is that appoints these diplomats. So it's like, good luck if
Right.
if you have a honest intention of wanting to change the world in an international way. And I don't even know what type of classes go into this. Maybe it's just teaching you the ways of the world, I guess, or what.
So there's like a pipeline.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, being a rich donor to a president helps you
Yeah.
a
Yes.
great
Yes.
deal.
Yes.
But there's something called the Foreign Service that's through the State Department, and so you take a Foreign Service exam, and then you can enter as a Foreign Service officer. So it wouldn't necessarily be like being the main diplomat for
Yeah.
a country, but working in that office, that
Okay.
sort of thing. So there's a pipeline
Ah,
there.
got you. Because I'm thinking like Rahm Emanuel, he just became the diplomat for Japan, or the
Yeah.
ambassador. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, the
Ambassador,
ambassador
yeah.
for Japan. And he worked his way through his connections and all that stuff. All right.
Uh-huh.
So and let me know if there's anything else you want to talk about your race. And we might actually come back to your race, because okay, yeah, actually let's go into that right now. Because just let the audience know we're going to be talking about 2022 strategy, 2024 strategy. Marianne Williamson as a potential candidate to challenge Biden. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things. So, and I want to also get this opportunity to give a shout out to PJ Holly Horn, who is in the chat right now. Now, much love to you, Holly. Let's get into what can a progressive do at the state level.
Yeah,
Like yourself.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think there's a degree to which we really focus on the federal level when we talk about politics, and assume that that's the only place that you can make real change. Um, and the fact is that from our country's founding, we were states first, right? That was kind of the way that it was built. It was built from the states into a federal system, effectively. And so there's a lot that can be done at the state level. I'm a major advocate for MassCare, which is the state initiative for single payer. Think of it as Medicare for all at the state level. So that's huge, right? That's
Yeah, yeah,
transformative for the
big
people.
time. Big time.
And there's so much more that can be done around affordable housing. Is increasingly becoming a major issue of mine that I'm learning more and more about every day. Climate change, making our state resilient in the face of climate change. State level funding for climate, renewable energy projects. There's so much. Basically, I'd argue that almost anything you can think of that you can do at the federal level, there's some impact that you can have at the state level, with perhaps the interesting caveat of foreign policy. But I think, I think it's huge. And for my campaign in particular, one of the things I think that's pretty unique about my campaign is I'm interested in democracy reform. I'm interested in seeing the ways that we can make the state capable of achieving more. And in my opinion, doing a lot more with the states around us, the states in our region that share a lot of our politics, frankly, and that there's a lot of overlap in the kind of goals that we have. And I'm happy to talk about that at length if you like.
Awesome, awesome. So, what's your game plan or strategy once you get into office? And I'm talking about like, I don't know the makeup of. Oh, I think we talked about it a little bit before the show that you said there's only 3 Republicans in the, what do you call it, the legislature,
The state Senate, yeah.
Yeah, but of course, all the other Democrats doesn't mean that they're our type of, ideology. So you
Yeah.
would know the makeup of who's the progressives, who's to the left, who's to the right, who's the corporatists, and all that stuff. So, do you have a slate of other people that are running right now that's challengers that you would like to form a team once you get in office, or maybe you already have a couple people in mind, or people who might have already endorsed you that you're ready to go and team up with? What you think?
Yeah, I'm already working on kind of building a kind of a de facto alliance, if you will, with a couple other state Senate candidates, a couple of state representative candidates as well. There's a candidate to my south who's running as a Democrat. I'm running as an independent. His name is Kyle Davis, and we've kind of just had some really good conversations from really early on, and see a lot of overlap in our goals. Might have some different language on how we see policy. Might have, and obviously our districts are different. His is a lot more urban, for example, than mine. Mine's probably one of the most rural state Senate districts in the state. But then there's also, some other allies that I see. There's an organization that's kind of in its early stages called Incorruptable Massachusetts, which is trying to build a slate of candidates for the Massachusetts State House.
All challengers?
All challengers, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
And so early stages on that, as far as I understand. But I think there's huge opportunities there. They're basically, I don't know if you're familiar with the Rhode Island Political Cooperative.
Yes, I am. Uh-huh.
So she's trying to build something like that for the state house. And so there's a lot of good work being done, and I definitely see a number of allies that I can work with. But in terms of the strategy, kind of overall, I'm the way I see it is I'm new to activism, and I'm new to domestic politics. I've told you about my interest in international politics going back a ways, but as a result, I'm kind of approaching this with very new eyes, and so one of the ways that I see that as like the way to achieve political change is really to be an activist in office, right? To be out there and connected with the grassroots as much as possible. And I would be the only independent, at least currently, as I understand the landscape. I would be the only independent in the state Senate. So I'd need to be, an independent voice. I need to be out there hitting the ground if I were going to make really any impact. And I think you had someone on very recently, another person running for state legislature.
Yeah, Kimberly, I believe that's
Kimberly,
who.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah.
And she was talking about oh my gosh, what was she saying? She was talking about basically like building relationships internally with incumbents effectively, and the basically like making nice in order to get forward. And I think I align pretty strongly with her on the notion of like you can't just be doing that. That's
Yeah.
not gonna you're just gonna become part of the swamp, so to
Yeah,
speak,
yeah, yeah,
if you do
yeah,
that super quick. So
yeah, yeah.
I see it honestly as mostly on the outside looking in with perhaps a couple of allies. And when I say looking in, I mean, banging on the door
Yeah.
to make change, to make things happen.
Yeah, so that's a good direction to go into, and I want to go into building solidarity on the left. But with you trying to be that type of challenger, where you're not really necessarily looking to build within the corrupt swamp coalition and make nice with these, get people on the outside, do you actively plan to say, okay, I'm going to work with the grassroots so that we can make noise, and potentially, you got to think long term. Short term, you can try to see what you can get, but long term, if we can find out who are the most corrupt people in the state legislature and get them out, that could be enough to scare everybody else into doing the right thing the next time. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think scaring the establishment has to be key. Like, and I don't want to overstate the level of corruption, but the fact is, it's one party that's been, in power for so long that, roots like the beginnings of corruption are inevitable, really. And so we need to keep that in mind when we talk about it. In terms of, supporting primaries, honestly, that's I'd have to think about that a little bit more. Like, how you do that strategically. Need to get into office first.
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
but I think you got to be willing to shake things up. I mean,
it helps being an independent, right? That
yeah,
by the facto, even though if it's like the federal government where Bernie is an independent, but he caucuses with the Democrats, then it's like you might as well be a Democrat. But I think that being independent gives you a little bit of an edge, right?
absolutely.
Right. All right. So let's talk about building solidarity on the left. And Holly Horn in the chat brought up a very good question. What are your standards for potential allies? So if you're trying to build solidarity, on the left you have a variety of in the ecosystem. So from people who believe in getting you vaccinated, people who believe in having no mandates, and there's people on all sorts of the spectrums. And matter of fact, you mentioned the Rhode Island Cooperative organization, and I remember reading an article where I think they kicked off a person off their slate because they had like I forgot if it was anti-mandate views, or they had like it was kind of views that was they didn't like, and they just kicked them out. And I personally was like, hey, but does that person agree with 90% of the other issues? And were they the best person in that particular district? Like, did you just kick out a good person for no reason? So that's what do you think about your standards for potential allies?
Yeah, I really like that question from Holly. Thank you, Holly. I think really it comes down to two things. I think it's character, just like a sense of like, is this a person that I think is going to stand by their principles, whatever those principles are. So that's pretty simple. And then obviously it's, as far as I see it, obviously it's policy, right?
Yeah.
It's shared policy on the big things, right?
Yeah.
The things that motivate my campaign. If we're not on the same page on like the biggest issues, then what's the sense in allying? And I guess there's also, I guess the other thing that I'd say is there's sort of different levels, as I'd see it, of allyship. There's like the people that were in the fight together, kind of regardless, if you will, as long as we share, the character and the values and the policy. But then there's like, issue by issue, right? Is there a smaller issue or something that's like a subset of, one of those main policy thrusts of the campaign as I see it, and my tenure, if I were so lucky as to join. But like small things, like could I ally with some Republicans on ranked choice voting, for example? If they see that as something that's valuable to their district, I'd say absolutely.
Yeah. I know we talked about it on the show. We do Political Junkies every Monday at 8 p.m. and Eastern Standard Time. And one of my guys, John, he said, like, hey, we need to learn how to build coalitions with Trumpsters. And he used that term. And it triggered one of my other panelists, my guy Carlito, and he's like, I don't like that term, Trumpsters. I don't want to think about it that way, like building coalitions with Trumpsters. If you say want to widen the coalition, that's fine. But like, see, he had like a instinctual reaction. Is like almost, I don't want to call it like a neoliberal or liberal reaction, because even though he's kind of a blue no matter who kind of guy, so he's kind of in that category. But like, I think that kind of reaction can be a problem, because let's say John was running in your position and you say, hey, we have to build solidarity with people who support Trump. Boom, automatically people like that would be like, oh, I'm turned off already, instinctually. So what do you think about using that rhetoric or trying to build solidarity in that way? What do you think?
Yeah, I'll be honest, building solidarity with Trump supporters in the legislature. Let's be clear about that. There's something different between building like solidarity with, the grassroots that, voted Republican. Like I think we too often conflate the Republican Party with the politicians and everyone who supports them.
Because there were people who supported Obama and voted for Obama, but then voted for Trump. So I agree with you.
Exactly. But when it comes to building solidarity with like Trumpsters, as you put it, in the legislature, I'll admit that my first instinct is I don't know how much solidarity I want to build with those people. But solidarity is huge, because that's about shared issues. That's about the shared values and shared principles, like what I was talking about. And I don't know how many solid Trump supporters there are.
And I'm sorry if I hope I'm not cutting you off, because it sounded like you were going to say, and I don't know what we can have in common with them. But I think like on corruption issues, they might be open. Because remember, he always said drain the swamp, but he never really drained the swamp. But that's something that I think Trumpsters, for lack of a better term, would be interested in. And then also Trump talked about, before he won office, he talked about in an interview, he would provide health care. And they asked, well, how are you going to pay for it? He said, oh, the government will pay for it, pay for everybody to have health care. Well, what does that sound like? Medicare for all. So maybe we don't have to call it Medicare for all. I'll be like, hey, you can call it whatever you want, as long as it's like a single payer kind of program or in that vein. So I think, what you think about that?
No, I think those are two really good issues to highlight that I think absolutely I can find solidarity with anyone that's interested in those kinds of issues. I think, transparency in government as an anti-corruption, tactic. I think, anyone who's up for that, I'm on board.
Nice.
And same goes with healthcare. Absolutely. If there's someone on the right that wants universal healthcare, I'm sure there's so much more that we share in common if even that one issue is something that we can talk about. So there's ample opportunity.
Also, 100%. I want to give a quick shout out to Inventor MJM. MJM, what does that MJM stand for? I'm curious in the chat. Much love to you. So let's move on and talk about strategy now. And we could talk about 2022 and 2024. So you're in the 2022. Let's talk about 2022 right now. First, I want to ask you, what's the prospects for the Democrats who currently run everything? They have the House, they have the Senate, they have the presidency. What do you think is going to happen in 2022? Are they going to lose the House and the Senate, both, either one? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking at the federal level, which it sounds like we are, yeah, I think the prospects for the House are pretty grim. I think the likelihood that that Democrats, I'm not a Democrat, I'm an independent, and I want to be clear about that, that Democrats hold the House is pretty grim, pretty unlikely. The Senate, I think there might be some chance that that Democrats manage to hold on, and I keep saying we. Because I would say, like, I'm a leftist. I'm a proud leftist. My label for myself that I'd say is left libertarian. And not only a lot of people know what left libertarianism is, so we can talk about that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, I might be in that category too, because I started off being a Ron Paul supporter, a big Ron Paul. That's how I got into politics back in 2007, and he's a libertarian. And it was because of I listened to this guy named Tom Hartman, who's a radio host, and
love Tom Hartman.
Yeah, and a lot of times he would debate Republicans, and I would listen. I love listening to both sides. Whenever there's an argument and you have opposite, and they're both intelligent, they both have good faith. They're not just trying to be like Sean Hannity and whoever. Right. I love listening to those type of discussions, and he would always make more sense than the Republican. So eventually he pulled me over to the Bernie Sanders progressive side, and that's where I am to this day. But I lost track of what we was talking about.
No, I mean, go ahead. So we were talking about with maintaining Senate and House.
Yeah. What was your prediction? You said so they're going to lose both?
They're pretty strongly likely to lose the House, and I'd say the Senate right now is kind of, it could go either way. I think that sounds kind of, no, I'll just say they're more likely to lose it, but they could hold on to it.
Now, what do you think they can do to like turn it around? Because as of right now, Biden, the current news right now, Biden is failing miserably at trying to get any voting rights and pass, try to reform the filibuster. We saw how they reformed the filibuster many times recently for their agenda, but they haven't done anything for the voting rights. And then, of course, the Build Back Better bill, that was not passed, and that has a bulk of what the people would want and what people would be able to feel, in their everyday life. Do you think between now and 2022, the Democrats can do anything to turn this ship around?
Yeah, between now and the midterms, I'm not optimistic that
not
they
me
can
either.
turn it around.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, what they can do is actually deliver for the people, and I think Bernie Sanders has been starting to make the case, and we'll see how whether he stays on this track or not of going for individual issues like kind of clean bills on particular issues, like the child tax credit. I think he said, just kind of on the minimum wage, things like that. So bringing it up issue by issue and kind of pushing
a bulk of things.
A vote. Yeah. And basically saying, let's get everybody on the record on each of those things. That could be an interesting strategy to kind of see whether that's an impact. It might feel kind of theatrical. For many of us, in the sense that you're not likely to get 60 senators on board with the child tax credit, even though it's immensely popular in the country. So that's a thought. I think on the voting rights stuff, I'm generally supportive of any move that brings people more voting rights, that makes access to the vote easier. And so, but we've seen, I think there was an article, I want to say, maybe the Atlantic or something like that, that basically said it's not just Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema that are on the fence. There are a number of others. So literally the only way that moves anywhere is if you make some sort of carve out for in the filibuster for voting rights.
So we got a lot of nice comments in the chat that I'm going to come to you guys in the chat. We're going to do a rapid fire over there, but I want to make this quick point and then move on to 2024, and then we're going to go to the chat. I think Biden, the last resort, the nuclear option in this case would be executive orders. Like he's failing on getting voting rights passed or getting the filibuster reformed. I like your idea of, okay, if we can't pass everything together, let's do it piecemeal, because now you have a little bit more pressure on Congress people to say, like, if you're not for a child tax credit, the specific thing. If that doesn't work, like maybe 6 months before the midterms, he has to say, you know what, I haven't gotten anything done. Pull out the executive pen. Let's legalize marijuana federally by putting it on Schedule 1. Let's or taking it off of Schedule 1. I forget which one it is, but making it legal. He can also forgive student loan debt. Now that would be huge. He can really help gain favor in the community by doing that. And there's many other things that he can break out the pen on. The question is, does he really want to do it? Right. I don't think he really wants to do it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me, I was actually musing about this. I think I might have tweeted something about this a little while ago, about like maybe he's holding out until like it's clear that they can't do, can't work with the Republicans, obviously, on these main issues. And can't do carve outs in the filibuster for a lot of this stuff. Clearly, stuff isn't passing by reconciliation either. So maybe he's just holding out until the last possible second as he sees it, and then he's just going to throw everything against the wall.
Terence, if he does not do that, we know this guy is the worst politician. I mean, he was good in the sense that he was better than Hillary Clinton, that he actually respected and gave lip service to the progressive left, right? Hillary Clinton, once Bernie was out, she just smacked us in the face, gave us the VP was Tim Kaine, right? Tim Kaine was the VP, like nothing. At least he could. I don't believe Kamala Harris is progressive at all, but there were a segment of people that, oh yeah, she's progressive. So, and he kind of placated Bernie and the left. So at least he was a smart politician in that sense. But if he doesn't pull out the executive pen, then he's absolutely useless. And that brings us to 2024. Should he be primary? So I think everybody here, even in the chat, I think everybody would believe that he needs to be primary from the left. The question is who? So right now, the biggest name is Marianne Williamson, who can possibly primary him. And I saw her, she did an interview recently, and her rhetoric sounds very strong. I think she articulated herself very well, that I'm hoping that can reach. And what I mean by articulate, meaning that you can be able to reach out to different coalitions. Like you're not just speaking to like the educated class, or you speaking to this class. You need to be able to speak to everybody. And I think she did that very well. A name that I would like to bring up is Dan Price, but I don't know if he even wants to become a politician, but he will have to go through the People's Gauntlet. So peoplesgauntlet.com, I'm putting a shameless plug. Let me see if I can find my banner. Boom, there we go. Peoplesgauntlet.com. He will have to go through the People's Gauntlet. Let us know where he stands on all the issues that progressives care about. So I talked enough. Let me give the mic back to Terence. What you think about 2024?
Yeah, I mean, I think I absolutely, I'm not following along in the chat. Here we go. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think a primary from the left is necessary to keep the fight alive for progressives and for folks on the left. Whether you think progressive is no longer a good term or not, folks on the left, broadly speaking, yeah, we absolutely need some kind of challenge. Marianne Williamson, to be honest, I think she's good-hearted, but I'm a little skeptical of her on the issues. She seems to kind of tilt at windmills a little bit on any particular policy issue.
Elaborate, because I know of one issue that I can speak on, but elaborate a little bit on that.
I'm trying to think of any particular. What one did you have in mind?
Yeah, the one I had in mind was Medicare for all, and I spoke to Joy Gray recently, Brianna, about that, and she I think she said she didn't remember that, and so I went and back and looked it up, and I sent her an article on. There was a moment in a debate when she was asked about Medicare for all, and she waffled on Medicare for all pretty much.
Yeah.
And then, but after the debate, she had another interview with TYT, and she said when she made that statement, she felt dirty, meaning that she knows that it wasn't the right answer. And I think to this day, I would think she's for Medicare for all. She'll have to reaffirm that, but I think she's in the right position now. But I think that might be something. And I brought that up when I talked to her, and Brianna has a great, she's on the call-in app. And you're able to like get in a queue and chat with her directly, which was really cool. And yeah, that was something that I was concerned about. But the point I wanted to make was, to me, my speculation is because she's in that, like, she's a progressive, but she has ties to the neoliberals and the liberals, what we would call, and that world, you know, of course, Oprah making her famous, so she's being famous because of Oprah. If she's really steadfast in her values, she would be a great person to build coalitions with that side. Now, we don't need 100% of the neoliberals, 100% of the liberals, but we need to shave off. That's what Bernie needs to do, quite frankly, after Nevada, when he was on a roll. He needed to reach out and say, okay, it's time for me to build some kind of coalition, because we need to shave off percentage from the Bidens of the world and this and the other neoliberals. I think she will be in a good position to do that. Now, the question is she steadfast? And I think that's the concern that me and you have. Is she steadfast in those values? Yeah. Right. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think you're right to bring up, like, the fact is we are a center-left country governed by a center-right establishment. I think that's like pretty, if you look at any, you know, combination of data around, you know, how people stand on the issues, that's where we are. But the fact is, in order to win an election, you do have to appeal towards the center on the federal level, at least. I think that's like,
I call it building coalitions. That's what I call it, because CNN, you know, there's the term called the normies. Normies are people who watch CNN, MSNBC. I love my mother-in-law. She's one of the people that watches CNN, have it on in the background while she's cooking. And when they say, oh, Bernie's unelectable, Biden is more electable, that goes right in there and that becomes law, you know? So we need to find a way to reach past, and hopefully one day the MSM, and they're becoming less and less relevant every cycle, but we're not there yet. But hopefully we're able to build that coalition. And I think there's times that you see AOC on the, like, Morning Joe, and she's on these mainstream media. I think I don't fault her for going on those shows, but I wish she would go on independent shows as well.
Absolutely.
And because we hold her accountable, really. When you go on the TYTs, I know she doesn't hardly go on TYT anymore. I think Jamal Bowman was the last member of the squad to go on. And Elian Omar went on TYT as well. But man, somebody just called me out of nowhere. Lost my train of thought. But yeah. Oh, AOC. I don't mind, like, Marianne Williamson. She went on Fox News. That's great. I want her to be able to go to different audiences and build. If she could shave off 5% of a Fox News audience with what she's saying, if she's saying anti-corruption, if she's saying we need to get everybody healthcare, like we just discussed, to reach out to those Trumpsters, lack for a better word, all we need is to shave off 5 more points, and that can help us win a general. Now, if we're talking about the primary against Biden, we know it's a really hard lift to beat a sit-in president, but at the very least, we can force him to do executive orders. And I think, and I want to say this, and I'll give you the mic, whoever it is that's going to run against Biden has to be not afraid to just run on maybe 2 or 3. Don't go crazy and say, I'm going to give you a plethora of executive orders, because now, you know, there's going to be those people that are like, oh, this is going to be authoritarian president or whatever. Just pick 2 or 3 strong ones. So definitely forgiving student loan debt, because you can do that at the forgive federal student loan debt. and marijuana issue. I think that should be 2, and then whatever the third one is, and then maybe that's it, and then run strong on that. And the hope is you shame Biden into doing it. If you're starting to gain traction, his supporters or his circle, the chief of staff and those people around him are going to say, hey, if we want to take the wind out of this person's sail, we got to do something. Go ahead, Terence.
No, absolutely. And another executive order that I think can't be overlooked is the one to basically institute Medicare for all in a pandemic, right? That's huge.
Yeah.
The idea that hasn't that the pressure hasn't built enough on him to do that yet is pretty crazy to me.
Kyle Kalinske covered a clip that I clipped on Case Study QB where when Texas had that emergency snowstorm and they had to like pour hot water down the toilet and all its craziness, Biden gave the whole state of Texas Medicare. He declared an emergency and gave the state Medicare. That was something that's kind of under. I found it on a local news channel. It wasn't even on MSNBC or anything like that.
So how long did that last? Like when you
that's a good question. I know that when it happened, the news clip was like it has happened, but that'll be something. Actually, I'll be curious to try to look that up to see how long it lasts. The thing lasted maybe about the whole situation lasted maybe about a week, I think.
Right.
So, but
I was not aware of that at all. That's
yeah. I was saying that I was thinking if President Case Study QB was running, right?
Yeah.
Even if in 2023 to run against, in the primaries against Biden, even if COVID was resolved, everybody's good, taking off masks, and I would go in there and say, I'm going to declare an emergency because we need Medicare for all, and this pandemic, it might come back at any moment. So we need to have an emergency Medicare for all right now, this moment, just to build up the infrastructure. I'll come up with all these reasons. I mean, Republicans do it with less. They do it for their horrible, horrible agenda that they just come up with stuff. And like, I remember when Trump took money that was appropriated by the House, and the House appropriates money. He just took the money, diverted a certain amount of it from the military towards the wall, right? To build the wall. Right. So if he could just do that out of nowhere, and there wasn't some huge crisis that went down, he just gave them, hey, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to throw my stick around and we're going to make things happen. So what do you think?
No, I mean, I wanted to come back to something you said a little bit earlier, which is about, building coalitions. I think that is the right way to frame it, whether it's, building a coalition that pushes, that shames the establishment to do something, or, building a coalition that, is a mass movement of some kind that brings the issue so far to the forefront that it can't be ignored. I said a couple of times, like I accidentally said, we, when talking about the Democrats, because I am of the opinion, and this might get me canceled by some folks on the left, that, the Democrats we have to work in coalition with them. They are likely to be our largest coalition partners on the left to get things done. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't hold them accountable for every single darn thing that they, stop doing. I think that even the leftmost members in Congress have lost the thread on Medicare for all, and haven't brought it, nearly forward enough the way that they did when they first ran. But building coalitions is the right way to think about this. And if your coalition includes right wingers, I've seen, a surprising number of folks on the right, willing to talk about universal health care, recognizing that that's such an important issue that it traverses any sort of party line you have. I think that's huge.
I'll be curious to know what you think about, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, Kusama Sawant over in Seattle, them socialist alternative Seattle city council member. And I love her motto, which is she's right there with the activists. She's out there in the streets with them and shaming the Democrats. And I want to see that duplicated. And I'm curious to see how successful that would be. Because so far, she's the one, that Seattle was the area that really popularized the fight for 15, and she just won. You know, Amazon tried to take her out a couple times, and she keeps winning. So, what do you think about her model of running?
Yeah, I mean, I hate using the phrase "you got to pick your fights," but you do in the sense that you got to pick them. But when you pick them, you got to be relentless with
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
And I think that Kashama Sawant has done a fantastic job and has managed to survive any number of attacks. I honestly don't know how she does it.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
no,
yeah, 100%.
she's a unique one and one worthy of keeping an eye on. And like the future of our politics is like a sense of where the left is moving. I think she's a stalwart on that front.
Yeah, if she was born in the United States, she would definitely be at the top of my list for 2024. I don't know if she wouldn't run in the primary as a Democrat, because I don't think she would ever run as a Democrat, even though I would think that would be very interesting. Somebody of her principles running inside the Democratic Party and shaming them directly. I think that's something that we need. Now on the left, we really there's a segment that really don't believe in working within the Democratic Party and trying to build progressivism from within the Democratic Party. They want to build from outside. And actually, that's a question I wanted to bring up. But I'm for all of the above strategy. I think every district is different. I'm even for trying to infiltrate the Republican Party, if you can, if possible, in certain red districts. Like if there's no hope of getting a Democrat or a third party who is on the left, like a Green Party, what if we can sneak in a populist Republican? So I'm for all the above. All right, so let's go to the audience, give some love to the audience, and then we'll see what else we have, and then we'll wrap up the show. Thank you so much, Terence, again, for coming on the show. I'm having such a great time with you. So I want to shout out, PJ Chris is in the building. Right Church, Wrong Pew is in the building. Pittsburgh Dude 87. Right. And now I just wanted to shout out some of the new faces in the chat. And now let's go to some questions. Here's one question from Inventor MJM. That's his initials. Any thoughts on Newsom's plan for Medicare in California, which is something that you said you're trying to do?
Yeah, so we're trying to do our version of that here in Massachusetts, and I think basically this you talk about kind of all of the above strategy, right? What we talk about in kind of the Medicare for All movement is a fight on all fronts, right? Looking for any way to move forward the issue, and the fact is, when it comes to healthcare, the model for us really is Canada. They moved Medicare for All forward, their version of it, by instituting it in one province at a time. Saskatchewan, I want to say, was the first province they got it in through, and then it spread like wildfire eventually throughout the country. And so, I think AB 1400, I want to say, is the bill that's making its way through the California legislature. I think it's immensely important. And if California is the first state that can get it across the finish line, I am all for it. I'm a little bit skeptical, if I'm honest, about whether Newsom would sign it if it got to his desk. But I'm hoping that the pressure will be enough that if it gets to his desk, that'll have a hard time turning it down.
100%. He also vetoed ranked choice voting. So he's been on my enemies list for a very long time. I was actually hoping that he would get recalled, even though the Republicans probably worse. But I was like, man, I definitely don't like that guy. But all right, what else we got here in the chat? Let me just throw up this comment from PJ Chris. Said, I don't think the Republicans are going to take the House and may lose bigger in the Senate. Interesting take, PJ Chris. Lots of choice seats up like Rubio and Johnson. But PJ Chris, there are a lot of people who are retiring in the Democratic Party, and some are moving, trying to run for the Senate. But that's going to be interesting to see what happens there because of so many people, so many Democrats retiring. So we'll see. All right, so let me ask you this question. What do you think about campaigning, merging mutual aid with campaigning? So this is my idea, and this is something I'm kind of toiling with the People's Gauntlet. What if you had a candidate who would send out the army of volunteers, and when they knock on doors, they have their pamphlets with them and to advertise, you know, let's say it's you, Terence, and to give out your pamphlets, but they say, hey, I want to ask you, what do you need help with? Like, what do you need help with right now? Do you have a heavy furniture that needs to be pulled out, and you live by yourself, so you've been unable to do that? You know, do you need your lawn cut? You know, we can't do it every month, but we can at least help you right now with something that you need. You write down their name on a list, and then we'll say, okay, we'll try to schedule a time to come by and help you with whatever that need. And now you're building mutual aid. Maybe you ask them, hey, what can you help out? We're trying to build a network, a neighborhood network. Is there anything that you would love to volunteer your time to help somebody else out with? Maybe you're a lawyer, or not even a lawyer. Maybe you're a plumber, and you can say, hey, I'll pro bono, I'll donate an hour of my time, or maybe for a very low price, I'll come and I can provide my time. So now you go to the next door neighbor, and that person say, hey, what do you need help with? They say, hey, my sink has been leaking for a long time. And well, you know, we just found out this person is a plumber right nearby. We'll contact them, see if they can help. You know, what you think about that as a campaign strategy?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. So first off, I'd like to give a shout out to Revolutionary Blackout Network, formerly Fred Hampton Leftists, because
Yeah.
they really brought mutual aid kind of like onto my radar. And
Me
you know,
too.
like as a group that I'd say overall is fairly skeptical of electoral politics. Like I resonate with their concerns about that, especially kind of at the federal level. I think there's a lot of good reason for skepticism, and so you know, I just wanted to kind of express that, give that shout out, and express that solidarity with them.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
but yeah, so mutual aid is still like new to me, and something that I'm learning more about. I love this as an idea for sure. I think you know, the question with campaigning is always like a matter of time. Like time is our most, you know, valuable resource as candidates, and so it's a question of like, do you have the time to, you know, go and not just knock on
Yeah.
doors, but you
Yeah.
know, also help move their furniture, or you
Yeah.
know, what
Yeah.
have you. And so I'm very much open to it. The other this might be a little controversial for me to say. The other thing that I struggle with is the door-to-door strategy in general.
Mhm.
And I think like mutual aid is great, and if you can do it outside of the door-to-door strategy and make it like part of your campaign and be more like a central hub as a candidate or as like a campaign for mutual aid. I see a lot of potential in that to be like, we're here not just to run a campaign, but also to just support our candidacy, regardless of who you vote for in the ballot box. I like that for sure. And the
Mhm.
reason I bring up my skepticism, and maybe it's idiosyncratic to my district, is my district is very rural. It's very spread out. You know, knocking doors on its own is like an immense challenge, and also it like
Mm.
depends on like the character of the district, in the sense of like, are people even open to opening the door and hearing what you have to say? Are there people
Mhm.
that are just full on turned off the second that you
Mm.
you know, ring their doorbell? You're impinging on their time. And so I just wanted to kind of
Mhm.
say that as part of like the
Yeah.
discussion, because I
Yeah.
think um, it's necessary to door knock, and I think you have to be very strategic in your door knocking campaign for any campaign.
Mhm.
But I just want to kind of bring that in. But I think tying campaigning together with mutual aid, like at a high level, is really cool. And I'm gonna have to do some soul searching on like, is there a way that I can make that part of what I do? Because I think it's key to like even talking about leftist solidarity, talk about like any number of things we've discussed today. Like this is how you get people engaged in politics again when they're so disillusioned now with the way politics has gone. Is you approach things differently. You make it feel politics feel real, because to so many people it's just shadow boxing. It's nothing real. It's not going to impact their lives, and that has driven so many people towards the right wing kind of anti-government, like let's just blow it all up, let's just we don't even need government anymore, there is that strain, and then there's a strain of that on the left too. And so I think anything that kind of piques people's curiosity and makes them think anew about like what politics can be and what politics can look like is great. And I think mutual aid is a really interesting avenue there.
Two things about that. First thing I've realized is that you need a very special candidate who believes in mutual aid. And it sounds like you're learning about mutual aid and you're getting there, but need a candidate that's passionate about mutual aid. And that's why one of the reasons that I've been trying to court Nick Cruz, Socialist MMA, who's a part of that organization you mentioned, the former leader Fred Hampton leftist, the Revolutionary Blackout Network. I've been trying to court him to run for office, and one of the reasons I think I want to convince him to run on this idea of merging mutual aid and electoral politics. That's the first thing. The second thing is building this type of network. By default, you would have to be doing this outside of election cycles. You know what I'm saying? So it will have to be something that is constantly going on. And that's why I'm hoping to find a way to build it into the People's Gauntlet and let the People's Gauntlet be that infrastructure or avenue that in every district there's some sort of organ. I was thinking of making it localized, like each district will have their own name, or it could be the People's Gauntlet of MA or district this way. Or what's the number, your district number by any chance?
I don't think the district really have numbers in Massachusetts. It's just
but let's just say
Essex and Middlesex district.
Okay, so like People's Gauntlet of Middlesex or something like that, where now you have an organization and they're constantly going out there. So, and you're not Democrat or you're not Republican, you're not a particular party, but you're just this organization that's out there constantly helping the community and building solidarity and building community, so that by the time the election cycle does come by, and the whole point of the People's Gauntlet is to find the people's champion, which is that person that we can all galvanize around. I describe it as when Obama consolidated the moderate vote against Bernie. The People's Gauntlet, the idea is to consolidate the progressive vote against whoever is on the other side and lift that person up. And hopefully you're not going to get everybody that you've been that's involved in the organization or that you've been knocking on doors. Some people are too far gone, so that's the term for like the super Trumpers or whatever. But I think you're going to be able to build, if you build in that community amongst the people, you're going to be able to build that 99% coalition that can really be a force when they get in the office. Yeah,
that's great. I love it.
Yeah. All right, so I want to ask you, let's do a rapid fire real quick. All right. And then we're going to get out of here because I don't want to keep you too long. So you live in Massachusetts. What you think about the Boston mayor and her progressivism? Because one thing that impressed me about her was that she ran on free public transportation. And then I heard that she wants to appropriate $9 million towards making 3 bus lines absolutely free. And I understand you can't just go in office and the next day like, okay, the whole thing is free. You have to kind of pilot this, pilot that, see how it works, see what doesn't work. So what do you think about her?
Yeah, no. So I will say I was very excited about her candidacy. I thought her views on equitable housing, on substance abuse, and mental health, and kind of merging these into a holistic sort of community oriented approach was very interesting and well thought out. She's trying to pursue a Green New Deal at the city level, and yeah, like you said, the project of, as I understand it, the project of free bus lines is ongoing. There are at least a couple, 2 or 3, I want to say, lines that are in an ongoing fashion free, and there's I think a ticking clock on that, at which point it'll be expired if she doesn't do something else. But I think she's done a pretty decent job so far. And it's like, as with a lot of things in politics, it's about bandwidth, right? It's like you only have so much time to do so many things, and so I'll admit to some skepticism that she can achieve all the things that she set out to achieve, but I think she's off to a solid start.
All right, next question: what do you think of Elizabeth Warren as your senator?
Yeah, so of our 2 senators, I'll admit I'm more of an Ed Markey guy.
Okay.
Than a Elizabeth Warren person. Full transparency, my girlfriend was a big Elizabeth Warren person.
Okay.
But I like her. I think she's done some good things for the people of Massachusetts. Picked some good fights. I struggled really hard with the way that there we go, with the way that she handled her electoral politics in the primaries. Was it just one primary that she was in? I forget.
You're talking about at the presidential level?
Presidential level.
Yeah, there was just one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think her response to Bernie in the presidential campaign was pretty heartbreaking to me, if I'm being honest. I think she attacked his character in a way that couldn't be falsified, couldn't be kind of borne out by the evidence. Everything that we know about Bernie seems to fly in the face of her kind of general attacks about him not supporting a woman for president. I want to say that he was pushing for her to run in 2016, and she didn't get in. So that's where we get to her one run in 2020. That he saw her as a better candidate for him for the Democratic primary in 2016. Yeah. So for her to come back and say, no, he doesn't believe a woman can be president. That was not very charitable. That was not very thoughtful. That was not that flew in the
face. It was such
an
obvious political move that her support just fell off the cliff after that moment. And I'll be curious, what did your girlfriend, and you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, what did she think of that moment as a Elizabeth Warren supporter?
Yeah, I mean, so basically she's a little bit more skeptical of politics than I am. Okay. Let's put it that way. Okay. And I don't want to speak too much for her. Okay. But so I think she basically said, the way she saw it is it's all part of the game. It's all part of, it's about, kind of finding your lane, and making your case, and we disagreed on that, and she pushes me to be better and to think through these things in a different way all the time, and I wouldn't be running without her. I wouldn't be who I am without her. So shout out to Sarah. But anyway, I think it just, that moment was one that made me really question her character. We talked about character early on in our conversation. And so, I think she still probably has some good to offer the country. But that was a moment that really stuck with me.
I always thought it was interesting that in the book Lucky, that talks about Biden's, path to the presidency, and therefore the title Lucky. It was a very good book, and one of the things that it talked about was how Obama, at one point, he had a meeting with all his donors. I think they were minority, like black donors, and he said, "Hey, I think we need to consolidate our support behind Elizabeth Warren, and she's going to raise your taxes, but I think this is something we have to do."
This is Obama who got
this is Obama, right?
Okay.
That said this, right? So I'm like, man, that could either be, I don't know if he's trying to compensate for his lack of support for progressives, or is Elizabeth Warren our type of progressive? Now, let me tell you my evolution on Elizabeth Warren. Back in 2014, like when she first got into the Senate, man, even before I was a big fan, and then she ran for the Senate, I was like, oh, great, she ran, and then she won, and with all her clout and her progressive bona fides, I was looking forward to her running in the presidency for 2016, and she came out with a book around that time, 2015, 2014, around that time, and I'm like, yes, telling everybody she's going to run, and she did not run. And from then on, she just took one progressive misstep after another, to this point where, like, she's lost all credibility with the left. With me personally, like, I wouldn't throw a vote near her. I would say this: I believe her on forgiving student loan debt, and if she would do it, I feel like she honestly would do that. Now, Medicare for all, she just bungled that. Like, I don't believe her on Medicare for all. So for me as a voter, I'm like, hey, give me something that can change my life, and I will give you something, which is the vote. And I still have student loan debt. My wife has student loan debt, and that would drastically change, even if it's the 50,000, which I still think is inadequate. I would prefer a complete jubilee on student loan debt. But even if she promised 50,000 executive order, now depending on who else is in the race, but she can potentially, I didn't vote for Biden, but she could potentially, with that, and if I believed her, potentially get my vote if it was her in the general. But other than that, I do not trust her, don't believe her on the overall progressive views. I mean, she's really good on Wall Street, and she does get a lot of attention. I watch Fox Business all the time, and I see they hate her just as much as they hate Bernie, and that's for a reason, right? So there's certain things that she is still really progressive on, and she's good, and maybe even better than Bernie in that Wall Street area. But overall, we need to find our Swants, those people that just do not, their principle is above all, like those Nick Cruzes, who I think that put the people first. Like I've come in contact with candidates, unlike you, who they think about themselves only, like that Hillary mentality. Bernie had not me us, and she had I'm with her. So we need to find more of those people who would put them themselves, who won't put themselves, they'll put the people first. Now I'll give you one last example before we end it off. Actually, so the last example is the part of the People's Gauntlet, like I discussed, was that, let's say you were running in your you said Middlesex, in your county,
in Middlesex,
and there's other progressives running. So you're running as an independent. Let's say there's a progressive Democrat running. Let's say there's a Movement for People's Party. Let's say there's a Green Party candidate. Now you're like, man, we're going to split the progressive vote. What are we doing, right? Well, you guys let's say all four of you guys do, or ladies do, the People's Gauntlet, and now the people in your district can decide, okay, who do we want to be the people's champion? But once we declare that people's champion, the idea is that everybody else drops out the race to support whoever becomes the people champion. Otherwise, what's the point? We'll still be splitting the vote. The people who drop out will be shown their integrity, will be showing where they lie. Are they for the people first, or are they for themselves first? And I think hopefully this People's Gauntlet builds up and builds a brand and becomes a thing, because I think that's what's going to really show us. There are people that you would listen to and be like, oh man, they sound really progressive and they sound great. And you tell them about, oh, you're going to have to drop out if the people don't choose them. They're like, I have to drop out. What? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if
Okay.
I want to do that. I think I could still beat that other, you know. No, that's not the point. The point is to try to get the best leftists in there at all costs, and we have to consolidate. Even if we have to cut, I'm not against cutting deals. If you say, hey, you could be my chief of staff or whatever behind the scenes, God bless, do whatever you got to do. But we need to be about gaining power on the left, and not about rhetoric, and not about purity, and not about all these different things. I hate the word purity, because just if I don't take corporate PAC money, does that mean I'm pure, or I'm just not corrupt? So anyway, the last question. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, you go ahead and say your piece on that, and then I'm going to give you the last question.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it all comes back to solidarity. We talked about it a good bit, but I feel like I could talk to you for another hour about solidarity and building it on the left. You know, I have solidarity with Elizabeth Warren on student loan debt. I went on a summit for student loan cancellation because I think it's a hugely important issue. But yeah, no, like building solidarity is huge, and I really like the People's Gauntlet and what you're building there, because yeah, the idea of when it comes to like democracy reform, which is huge for me. Unfortunately, we're in a position where, you know, if there's more than two candidates in the race in my district, the incumbent wins. It's like no question asked. That's it. And I think, you know, building the infrastructure to facilitate a people's champion rising up is awesome. And yeah, I would absolutely be one of those. If I wasn't the people's champion, look, I will step back. I will find my next, you know, avenue. That's huge. So thank you for what you're doing with the People's Gauntlet. I think it's great.
Also, just want to give a quick shout out to Abel Martinez in the chat, Paul Patrick in the chat. Much love to you guys. As well, give the last question to Terence as we end the show. What do you think of the term socialist, and do you consider yourself a socialist? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the first part was, sorry, could you give me
the first one? The question is, what do you think of the term socialist and socialism?
Yeah, right. So yeah, I think socialism is, gosh, it's such a politicized term at this point that, to be honest, unless you are a socialist, I am skeptical of any like definition that you have for the term. Basically, it's really hard for me to like get around having the conversation about socialism and with someone who doesn't identify as a socialist, because there's so much bad faith around the term. With that said, I don't self-identify as a socialist. I identify as a left libertarian. To me, the reason why is because I find the term constricting to me. It's framed in sort of very economic terms, and economics, while pivotally important, isn't my main concern. My main concern is freedom and democracy. So libertarianism, left libertarianism in particular, has liberty right in the name there. So that's why I resonate with that term more. But to talk about solidarity, there are so many socialists, so many leftists that have other terms for themselves that I see fit to build solidarity immensely with. I just don't personally identify with the term.
Awesome. All right, Terence, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm just going to end off the show with this statement from Abel. Said, I feel that one thing politicians and aspiring politicians are missing is a true vision of the future of the country. What is our goal? What is the framework for which we make decisions? Such a great statement. And the last thing I'll say about the People's Gauntlet, you know, people who have gone through the gauntlet, I'm not going to say any names, but some of them, surprising to me, have thanked me and said, man, thank you for this gauntlet and these different topics, because I didn't know about a lot of these different topics, and that the progressives care about these things. And being in my bubble as a political junkie, like, I get surprised when people running for office don't know about certain things, like Palestinian Israel conflict, like the U.S. Postal Office having the issues, and or public banking through the U.S. Postal Office. Like, there's certain topics that I'll talk to them about, and like, wait, you don't know about this? So the People's Gauntlet creates almost like a de facto platform. Like, here's your platform, but just tell us what you think about it, so that it's almost like a questionnaire. And it's not to knock them, because I can't expect everybody to be as deep into politics as maybe. And you said, Terence, yourself, you're still learning, and I'm always still learning, but I've been very involved from like since 2007. Anybody in my family would tell you that I'm a political kind of minded guy that loves politics. That that the people doing the People's Gauntlet, which is another reason why I think a lot of even grassroots candidates, I try to pitch them the People's Gauntlet, try to tell them, hey, you should do it. You can help build a brand. You can help build something new that 10 years from now could be like, how the Justice Democrats one day were nobody to now, now they're a behemoth with a really big brand name, and they're on TV and stuff. You can help start that. And a lot of people do not. We only have I think 4. We're going to be announcing some new contenders soon, but on the website I think we only have like 4 or 5 contenders. So not a lot of people, even people who could possibly use the clout, aren't becoming people's contenders, because maybe people's gauntlet doesn't have enough clout just yet, or maybe they see the questions and they just get scared off. I don't know. But thank you so much, Terence. Do you have any last words before I let you go?
Yeah, I guess I'll say one more thing.
And tell people where they can find you, the websites, and anything like that as well.
Sure. Yeah. So in terms of finding me, Cudney Forum A, it's there on the screen. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram under that handle. You can donate to my campaign if you're interested. I'm trying to get in front of as many people as possible, and state campaigns are, less glamorous in some senses, but donorbox.org/Cudney Forum A, CUDNEY 4MA. But yeah, I mean, I think the last thing I'd say is, when we talk about, the duopoly, Democrats for Republicans, building solidarity, things like that. Look, the Democrats, if we're going to move anything forward, the Democrats have to do something for the American people, or the rest of us are out. There's a reason why I'm running as an independent. You got to deliver for the people. Yeah, I think maybe I'll just leave it there.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody in the chat: Holly Horn, PJ Chris, Paul Patrick, Abel Martinez, Inventor MJM. And I know Holly Horn, just want to PJ Chris, Pittsburgh Dude, and everybody else. Much love to y'all. Terence, we got to do this again. Hopefully I can have you on my Political Junkie show on a Monday night. I would love to have you on your comments on that. And everybody have a great day. Adios.